So you're in the middle of creating a children's ministry theme, and the question on your mind is, where do I begin in the facility that I have? Hi, I'm Randy Tribble with Creative for Kids, and you're at the place in creating your children's ministry space where you need to know where to begin in your facility. You have X number of dollars that need to go here, or I have a lot of space but a limited budget, or I have a lot of space and a lot of budget. Where do I begin and what is a priority? So that's the question I want to answer today for you. Well, there is a priority, number one. You have it right in that we do rank space by priority. We have areas that we consider prime real estate areas. The prime real estate areas in general are the areas that people are going to see the most as they walk in or around your facility. So priority number one, generally speaking, is your check-in area or foyer area to your children's ministry space. Why? Because so many people end up there, right? So many people congregate there. They're walking around, meandering, talking. So we want to have the greatest impact with the financial investment that you want to give. So the foyer check-in area of your children's ministry space, generally speaking, is number one. Number two, generally speaking, is your primary hallways. Again, most traffic flows down primary hallways, so that's your number two space by priority. Again, we want to make sure that we create a theme that catches the attention of as many people as possible, so as they walk down hallways, again, they're going to interact, they're going to see and feel and be experientially in that theme environment. So your primary hallways are number two. Number three on the list of priorities is your kids' church space or large group gathering space. And again, the reason for that is because a lot of people gather here. I know generally speaking it's for older age groups. That's why it's number three, because most of the time it's kindergarten, first grade up to fifth, sixth, something of that nature. So we have a large group gathering space. It's a great space to invest financially in creating a theme. And then lastly, number four is classrooms. Generally speaking, classrooms are number four, in part because the only people that typically see a classroom are the parents and kids that are a part of that classroom, right? So we're narrowing down the amount of eyeballs that are going to see your theme as we get down to a classroom. Now, in those spaces, we actually have prioritied walls within the kids' church space as well as your classroom. So let's start with that. In your kids' church space, because it is generally a large space, we say that there are primary walls, right? So generally speaking, in a kids' church space, the stage wall and side walls are your first priority, depending on where you are financially and what you can invest. So the stage wall or front wall and the side walls are the primary walls. If you have additional funds that you want to invest to envelop the entire space in a theme, then you can do the back wall as well, okay? Now, let's talk about classrooms. In classrooms, there are what we consider four walls, and they're related by priority, okay? So as you walk into a classroom and you stand in the doorway, the wall, generally speaking, that is directly across from your door is wall number one. If practical and applicable, that's the wall that you want to theme on. And the reason for that is as parents and families walk by that classroom, if they happen to glance in, we want them to see something, right? We want them that to catch their attention. So that's why it's the primary wall. Now sometimes that's not going to be very practical. You may have a lot of windows on that wall, or there's other objects or whatever that just don't make that wall very practical. So then, as you're standing in the doorway, what is the second wall that is seen the most from the doorway? And then, what is the third wall that is seen by the doorway, if those first two are not practical? And then lastly is the wall that the door is actually on. Now, in general, we don't typically recommend that you do that because, again, in order for anybody to see it, they have to walk into the classroom and turn around to see the theme. Okay, now let's talk about the volume in a classroom space. In a kids' church space, because again, typically they are large rooms, you can get away with, again, four walls if it's a large space, three walls that are in front of you if it's a still large space but limited budget. And the smaller the space gets, it's my recommendation that you shrink that sidewall space up a little bit. you can overstimulate, right? So in a classroom in particular, you can overstimulate. So we want to be careful about that. So again, in a large kids church space, front wall for sure, part of the side walls. If we have a smaller kids church, larger kids church, you can have it all the way back. In a classroom, I always recommend one wall and two at most, but most generally I stick with one wall. Again, you can overstimulate. You know, your theme can become a distraction if you're not careful. So typically speaking, one wall, two at most, but only that two would be an exception. Again, if it's a large classroom space, you really feel like you want to carry it over, that would be an exception to that rule. But if it's a typical classroom space, one wall should be sufficient for you. Now, if you've got additional questions that aren't being answered in this video, look around our website, www.creativeforkids.com. You're going to see a lot of answers to a lot of questions through videos and articles that we've written, as well as to be inspired by our very large mural gallery. Over 1,200 pictures that you can look at to inspire you in ideas about your theme and that kind of thing. So we'd be glad to help you. And then if you have additional questions beside that, feel free to call us. 877-637-0122. We'd be glad to answer whatever questions that you may have that are not answered here. Always remember, at Creative for Kids, it is always our goal to empower you with the knowledge you need to make the best decisions for you and your church.